Welcome to our continuation reading of Glow, the autobiography of Rick James with David Ritz, the famed um, musician's biographer who's done Marvin Gaye, Ray Charles, Aretha Franklin, to her dismay, and Rick James, as well as Janice Gaye. So we looked at Janice Gaye's book and we were so enthralled and mind blown that decided to really blow our minds one time and check out old Slick Rick. It should pick up on the page that we're on, and it did. And isn't it cool? Okay, y'all ready? So, well, let's give the people a small opportunity to get in here. Because first was Melody's Child in Key, first and third. And second was Brother Minister Reuben. And then we got Grace Keep It Together. Peace and blessings. Welcome. And we're going to start the reading after the room fills in just a little taste. So I suppose that until then we may check out a tune or two, perhaps. We probably need to hear. Okay, we got this two spots. Let's try here. Does anybody feel? don't say that, Sister Suzette. Does anybody? Is anyone else experiencing buffering? I can usually tell when it's going to happen on your end because it starts on mine. So far, we seem to be okay. No, sir. I haven't had a chance to listen yet, but I shall. We'll let the room get to about 20. Okay, cool. So let the room fill up to about 20 people or so. And then we're going to go like E4O. All right. Let's see. Now the vowels say ready, set, glow. We almost ready to go. We're going to see who we can rustle up for this reading of Glow for the night. Everybody was hooping and hollering about it. When you going to go back to reading Glow? And they ain't nowhere to be seen. Like wet clothes, Sister Minister T, like wet clothes. Hey! Peace and blessings. Strike that like. And welcome back, Kim Possible. Moving weight. It's a beautiful life with such a beautiful friend. Sister Vanette. Yes, it is. A beautiful life that has no end. Listen, oh, I trust him now, and I'll trust him when this whole life has come to an end. Jesus, Jesus, He is my friend. He is my friend. Jesus, Jesus, He is my friend. With Melody's Charlie and Key, I shouted you out as first. What name is that? What name you talking about? Good night, Sister Natasha. Kim Possible. Yeah, that's sweet. When I was 6 y'all, he came to see about me. When I was lost, so lost, his truth set my spirit free. Okay, y'all ready? We're about 10 minutes in. Let's get it. Yeah, that's a unique name. I even thought the cartoon, when I saw the name on the cartoon, I thought that was a clever name. All right, y'all, let's go ahead. Round 3, right on. Big nephew Drew from Chi-Town is in the house. Welcome home. And Elijah Brown is back with us. Welcome. Let's get to it. Mother Earth is the name of the chapter that we last left off on, according to Google Read. I'm glad they remembered. I sure did. Y'all ready to hear about Mother Earth? From old Rick James. Let me get my tone right. Do, re, fi, la, sol, la, ti, do. All right, ready? Charlie Murphy. Okay, all right, here we go. I gotta practice. You know, you hit the Charlie, like Cholly, Charlie Murphy. That's the first step. All right, here we go. Mother Earth. And I bet it's gonna be one. Seville was an Earth mother. We fought like couples fight. We even broke up several times, but our bond was tight. She was a beautiful person, beautiful lover, and beautiful homemaker. When she told me she was pregnant with our child, my first thought was that I'd wanted to be rich and famous before having kids. I was neither. My second thought was that a new life was always a blessing. I was thrilled. I knew Seville would make a great mom. I wasn't sure what kind of dad I'd be, but I was determined to give it a try. I didn't take the responsibility lightly. I thanked God for the gift of life. I needed that piece of good news to offset the blues that came with the dissolution of Salt and Pepper. My hopes were dashed. He wanted to be on Push It. He wanted them to sample him and not MC Hammer. My hopes were dashed. No. That's referring to earlier chapters. Go back and check out the previous broadcast we was reading prior to this. I convinced myself that Salt and Pepper was going to captivate the nation. Instead, the deal collapsed and I was staring into space. I had to gear up all over again. That takes effort. How many times can you strike out before you start believing you've lost your stroke? Well, I was GD certain that I did have my stroke. My friends were on teams that were winning the World Series. They didn't have anything that I didn't have. All I was missing was a break. And yet, having missed that break time and again, I couldn't help but get down. Fortunately, Seville's pregnancy gave me something positive to focus on: her health and the health of our child. I kept drugs out of our house and found the occasional gig to keep us in groceries. Good friends like Stephen Stills threw me some money now and then. We got by. That's of Crosby, Stills, and Nash. When our angel girl, Ty, was born, I was over the moon. I danced with joy. The first thing I wanted to do was show Mom her granddaughter. So we went to Buffalo. I can still see the joy in my mother's eyes as she saw Ty for the first time. Mom and Seville got along like mother and daughter, and I felt safe back in a city I knew better than any other. Then came the bad news from Toronto. We don't get 2 pages deep before we start with the bad news. Morley Shellman was dead. Sounds like a loss of bread. Morley Shellman was dead, killed in a fiery motorcycle accident. Even though Morley and I had fought bitterly and even violently, his death hit me hard. He was the guy who had believed in my talent. At the same time, I learned that Elk had returned from Europe and was in a Toronto hospital, where she was dying from lung cancer. Another huge blow. I decided to visit her. I wanted to tell her goodbye. I drove across the border and rushed to her side. I heard told that she looked fine. Found a typo. Whoop. Makes me feel good. Yeah, because if they can make them, of course I can make them. Yeah, publishers and editors supposed to read through this. I heard told. I told her that she looked fine and would be out of the hospital in a matter of days. She wanted to believe me. She needed support. But I knew she'd never leave the hospital. She was down to skin and bones. The doctors told... Maybe Rick James meant it to say that. It is Rick James. She was down to skin and bones. The doctors told me that her cancer was spreading everywhere. Yet even in her frail condition, she was encouraging me. When I told her the hard time I'd had getting a deal, she said it was only a matter of time. "You'll be one of the biggest stars in the world," she said, putting her hand to my cheek. "I love you, baby," I said. "I love you too." Those were her last words to me. When I returned the next day with another bouquet of flowers, they told me she was gone. Sickness was everywhere. Seville's mother was seriously ill in L.A. "I've got to get out to California to see her," said Seville. "Ty and I will come back to Buffalo as soon as my mother gets well." I stayed in Toronto. The scene was dead except for a couple of clubs. I sat in with some groups and made some loose change. My heart was heavy. Elk was gone and so was Seville and Ty. One night at the club, I was singing the straight-ahead Bobby Bland, B.B. King 12-bar blues when I locked eyes with a chick named Kelly. Kelly was prettier than pretty. The girl was gorgeous. Big brown eyes, full lips, crazy body. She waved me over to her table. Turned out to be Canadian English with an enchanting accent. She was deep into brothers and black music, and I loved white women just as much. No, excuse me. She was deep into me. That night, the heavens came down as we loved until daylight. We loved all that week. By then, I knew good loving, but this was another category altogether. Kelly and I went beyond the physical. Our stuff was metaphysical. It took us all the way to Mars and back. I was torn. I loved Seville and our baby, but darned if I didn't love Kelly. I stayed in Toronto for nearly 4 months while Seville was caring for her mom. All that while, the thing with me and Kelly was getting deeper. I was getting guilty. I told Kelly about Seville. Because Kelly was such a cool chick, she said, "We need to stop. We need to do what's right." I agreed. It was tough but necessary. When Seville's mom improved, Seville and Ty came to Toronto. I decided to stop the lying and confess. I told Seville about me and Kelly. Then Seville told me that she also had had an affair. We were both hurt and PO'd. "This isn't working," said Seville. I agreed. We tried for a couple of weeks, but the tension was too much. Our relationship was crashing all around us. We were fighting like alley cats. "This isn't good for the baby," said Seville. "It isn't good for anyone," I said. "I'm going," said Seville, "and I'm taking the baby with me." I had no arguments. I had no alternative plans. Seville left with Ty, more regrets, more confusion. One thing was clear, though. I still wanted Kelly, and Kelly wanted me. We fixed up an old Victorian house and moved in together. Kelly got my motor going. She motivated me to get back on my hustle. I started writing songs again. We went out to clubs. I identified different musicians I thought might be able to bring off my ideas. Most importantly, I found a rich, party-loving, music-loving lawyer who spotted my talent and was willing to back me in a band. He was looking for somebody to sponsor him. This time I was going to flip the script and do something different and bigger. As I planned my next move, two musicians had a big impact on me, Marvin Gaye and Miles Davis. Marvin and Miles were both experimenters. They were bold pioneers, willing to go places no one else had gone before. Marvin had come out with What's Going On, a radical departure from the singles he'd been dropping with Whitfield. First of all, he put himself in the pilot seat. He produced the thing himself. He co-wrote all the songs. And he also created a concept album rather than a bunch of disconnected songs. He told a long story of a cat who comes back from the effed up war in Vietnam and tries to adjust to the effed up big city black ghetto. Marvin laid it all out. Politics, drugs, religion, even ecology. Later, he told me Berry Gordy didn't want to put it out because it was too controversial. Marvin told Gordy to sit on it. If it wasn't released, he'd never record from town again. Gordy backed down, and just like that, the producer-driven era was over. Soon, Stevie Wonder, taking Marvin's lead, would be producing his own albums. The whole thing, Marvin's genius, the whole thing, Marvin's gutsiness, Marvin's vision, and Marvin's sweet, funky music was an inspiration. Miles had started fooling electronic instruments in a silent way, in the album In a Silent Way. For a straight-ahead jazz cat working in the purest jazz world, that was a brave move. But with B's Brew, he kicked in the doors. He introduced serious funk and rock into the mix. The stuff was freeform as a mug, and I loved it. Miles also had the taste to include virtuoso cats like Wayne Shorter, Joe Zawinul, Chick Corea, John McLaughlin, Jack DeJohnette, and Lenny White. The riffing over those polyrhythms blew my mind. I felt like Miles was saying to us artists, musicians trying to figure out our next move, go for it. I went for it. I told my party-loving lawyer that I wanted to do something big. I wanted a big band. I wanted to paint on a large canvas. To realize the sounds in my head, I needed lots of players. I loved big bands in every era, starting with the first time I heard Benny Goodman play Sing, Sing, Sing with Gene Krupa on drums. I loved Dizzy Gillespie's big band, and I loved Gil Evans' big band, especially his records Out of the Cool and Sketches of Spain, which he wrote for Miles. For a minute, Monk, as in Thelonious, had a serious big band. And of course, I loved rock bands like Chicago and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Soul bands were also my thing, especially Tower of Power, who had just put out East Bay Grease. And naturally, I never stopped learning from Tower of Power's main inspiration, James Brown. The Godfather was the grease, grit, and guts of groove-centric R&B. In short, I wanted horns, as I was listening to Tower of Power, and you certainly did. In short, I wanted horns and reeds and a rhythm section that could burn down the barn. I needed money, and lo and behold, the lawyer coughed up the dough. He saw the fire in my eyes and was willing to bet on my talent. I started writing. I quickly hired the right cats. I quickly found my sound. Influenced by Marvin, I had songs like Mother Earth that concerned protecting the planet. I had a thing called Country Girl that rocked hard in a blood, sweat, and tears mode. Don't You Worry had a rock vibe that I knew would worry Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. Besides the killer music we made, I'd also come up with a killer name for myself. White Cane. Wink. And Big Daddy, I guess, was Black Cane. Knowing that I'd never get a deal from Toronto, I convinced my backer to fly me, Kelly, and the band to L.A., where we could showcase for the music biz moguls. He wanted to name it after a few of his favorite things. We hit the ground running. We smoked the city. and everything else we could. No, stop. We smoked the city. I'm sorry. Tearing up club after club until the label boss finally came up with the mean green. When we scored a $250,000 advance, that's $250,000. When we scored a $250,000 advance, I couldn't help but be happy, except for a funny feeling I had about the label, MGM. Mike Curb, who signed us personally, ran it. When I went to Curb's office, there were all sorts of pictures with him and his other big act, the Osmonds. There were also photos of him with that jive Richard Nixon, one so-and-so I couldn't stomach. I got the idea that Curb was a card-carrying Republican. First thing he said was, "I love your music, Rick, but you'll have to change the name of the band." "Why?" "It's promote drugs," he said. "What drugs?" "Cocaine." Cocaine is spelled C-A-I-N-E. We're C-A-N-E. White cane is talking about sugar cane. We're sweet as sugar. "I don't think so, Rick." "Well, Mike, you know you're the boss of MGM, but I'm the boss of White Cane. So either you'll take us with our name or we'll find someone who will." Sensing we were about to break wide and not wanting to blow an opportunity to make big bread, Mike caved. "White Cane is okay," he said, "as long as you have no songs promoting drugs." I wanted to say I had lots of songs promoting lovemaking, but I decided to shut up. I'd won the battle. The next battle had to do with the producer. I didn't think we needed one. Mike did. This time I caved. Even though I knew what the band had to do in the studio better than anyone, it was Mike's dime. Jimmy Yenner was Mike's producer. I didn't like the guy. I didn't like his toupee, and I didn't like his plastered-on phony smile. I called him the Tooth. He bragged about his big success with the Raspberries. I wasn't impressed. To my way of thinking, he had only the most superficial understanding of the three elements that made White Cane so good: jazz, funk, and rock. I was glad when the Tooth took us to Village Recorders, one of the best studios in L.A., but I was horrified when he started producing. He massacred our music. He found a way to deconstruct what it had taken us months to construct, a full-bodied sound with layers of close harmonies. Over in-the-pocket grooves guaranteed to keep the party going all night. I fought with the Tooth all night. Ultimately, because I didn't have control, I lost. I was excluded from the mixing process and at one point barred from the studio. When the record came out, the trade magazines like Variety and whatnot, the trades said White Cane had potential, and Rolling Stone. The trades said White Cane had potential, but that the production sucked. The trades were right. Curb tried to boost sales by having us tour with B.B. King. B was super hot with his first crossover hit, The Thrill Is Gone, and it was an honor to open for him. I loved B, a beautiful man who treated me like a son. One night I asked him whether if I called my mother, a big B.B. King fan, would he talk to her. He talked to her for 15 minutes. That made me love B even more. Yet for all the goodwill between B's band and mine, for all the excitement of our live tour, the record itself bombed big time. Not only did the production do us in, but the production costs ate up our advance. When it was over, I was left with nothing. Curb dropped us, White Cane disbanded, and I was broke. Kelly and I hung around L.A. where I tried to keep the band together. Without the support of the label, though, I couldn't do it. I looked around and saw that soul music was all about Donny Hathaway, Roberta Flack, Al Green, and the Shy-Lights. I saw Bill Withers, who I loved, and understood his brilliant marriage of folk and soul. I could have done that. I thought of going to Philly, where the OJs and Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes were turning out smashes for Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. I could have done that as well. Neil Young had a huge hit with Heart of Gold. I could have gone with his group if he had asked me. On the rock side, the Crosby, Stills, and Nash style America had A Horse with No Name. I could have done that. I could have done all this stuff, but I didn't do any of it. I heard all the songs that were making stars. I knew all the stars who were making money. I had what they had: musical vision, originality, stage presence, a voice, a look. except that I had been denied over and over again. How long could I put up with defeat? Subsisting in another crummy Hollywood apartment with a clogged toilet and peeling paint at age 24, I asked myself a question for which I had no answer. What the blank am I going to do now? 27 minutes in, so we'll read one more chapter of Rick James. 4:11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I appreciate folks who spared that dime and hit that like button just one time. Please do hit the like and also subscribe if you've not done so tonight, so that you can be in on our live streams, which will be sporadic and random for at least the next 2 weeks. So if you want to keep up with what's going on the live stream, you have to be subscribed to this channel. The Unplug 'em channel, our original channel, has had the live stream capability suspended for 90 days. And we've probably got about 60 or so, or more, to go. Passage to India is the next chapter. Passage to India. So yes, I do appreciate you. We got 30 folks watching, 17. Hit the like button. Please hit the like. I appreciate you. I try to be consistent, but again, just like I said, it will be announced, because for the next couple of weeks, it's going to be sporadic, at least. So I'll try to do like I did tonight and give folks a heads up. That's how we're going to have to do. Peace and blessings to you. Good Sister Chocolate E. Let's Ride is inside. Welcome. And also Sister B. Unique B. Didn't that 30 minutes go fast? Sister Kim, welcome. Anybody I might have missed that snuck in here, I was looking down. Don't be sneaking around. There's Big Sister Elaine C. in the place to be. And anybody else I missed, I'll try to go back and check after this chapter. But let's move forward. Okay. Peace and blessings to Real Karen. All right, let's continue. Right on. I appreciate you. Thank you, Big Sister Elaine. Now, so far this has been a tale of 3 cities: Buffalo, Toronto, and LA. And Big Sister Elaine, you was doing the Rick James. Sister Suzette told on you. She said you was doing the Rick James impersonation at the bus station. So far this has been a tale of 3 cities: Buffalo, Toronto, and LA. Right on. I've been running back and forth between those places, looking for a way to get over LA. LA had always proved to be a dead end. Buffalo was always dead, period, and Toronto seemed to yield the most. Toronto was the only place where my talent was really recognized. Yeah, there's no good talent there. Drake, Travis Scott. It's no surprise then that Kelly and I fled to Toronto after the demise of White Cane. Kelly's parents weren't pleased. Psych. Kelly's parents weren't pleased that we were still together. They didn't like the idea of their girl going black. And they tried to break us up, but the love was too strong. The love bonded us in all ways, even our forays into scamming the system. Pardon me. The love bonded us in all ways, even our forays into scamming the system. I was disgusted with the music business. I didn't see how I could put together a better band than White Cane. If White Cane could cut it, F the whole thing. There were other ways to make money, especially in Canada, where the bankers weren't all that vigilant. Our first scheme worked for many months. Kelly would dress up in her sexiest outfit. When she walked in the bank, every loan officer hoped that she'd come his way. Their eyes were popping, and they were aroused. When she chose the lucky guy, she'd tell him a sob story. Her mom died, her dad got cancer, her brother broke his neck. She'd tell him how she had just started a new job with a decent salary, and her boss would be glad to test it for her. She'd give the loan officer our home number, and I'd answer the phone in the whitest voice since Richard Nixon. That's what he said. I'd pretend to be the boss and sing her praises to the sky. Time and again, she scored the loan. Soon we had enough bread for a car and a cool apartment. After a few months, we foolishly overdid a good thing, and Kelly got popped. She avoided jail, but she was told she'd have to start repaying those loans. What now? Well, drugs were always a good source of income. And in Toronto in the early 70s, hashish was the drug of choice, especially black hashish from Nepal. Two friends of mine, I'll call the White Tom and Black Jerry, had made serious bread smuggling. They talked about the cheap price of hash and coke in India and its trouble-free accessibility. These cats weren't exactly Einstein. If they could do it, I figured I could do it. If we skipped the country, it was also a way for Kelly to get out of all those loan payments. Besides, I'd never been to that part of the world. I wanted the adventure and I wanted the money. Kelly was game, and after securing our passports, we were off. Another world, another culture, another look, feel, and smell. The streets of New Delhi were thick with humanity. This fool went to India to get some dope to bring back and sell. I know times was different pre 9/11, but wow. Beggars were everywhere, while cows, considered holy, walked around like they owned the city. If you hit a cow, even by mistake, the consequences were grave. My first impression of India was fat cows, thin people, and unbelievable poverty. I'd grown up in the ghetto. I thought I knew about poverty, but American poverty ain't nothing compared to what they got in India. Kids eating out of garbage, frail old ladies falling over dead in the street, men crapping in the alleys, the taste of dirt always in your mouth. I was amazed and also cautious. I was a black cat traveling with a white chick and didn't want to mess with Indian law. As best I could, I kept a low profile. Being streetwise, I figured I'd find my way around, long as I was patient. I didn't have to be. No sooner had we checked into a hotel recommended by Jerry than the bellboy who carried up our bag asked where we were from. Toronto, I said. Do you know Jerry? A black guy? Black as night, said the bellboy in extremely good English. He's my man, I said. Mine too. Turned out the bellboy was Jerry's connection. We were off and running. I gave him a bottle of scotch and he took me to the hotel drugstore where the druggist locked the door and brought out a big glass container of pharmaceutical cocaine. The stuff was fantastic and only $30 for 2 grams. I was quickly falling in love with India. As is often the case in the world of drugs, one thing led to another. Through the bellboy and druggist, we met other dealers who hooked us up with big quantities at low prices. We were always high. Something about the exotic nature of that city kept us horny. Of course, the most androgynous gods of any pantheon worldwide. Krishna got a woman's face. Shiva got a woman's face. Anyway. And then you've got the tantric sex magic that comes from India. He says, oh, excuse me. Okay. We messed around like crazy. We also felt a spiritual vibe that's an essential part of India. We met a relative of Ravi Shankar who sold me a sitar and gave me lessons. I loved the axe. We traveled to see the Taj Mahal. I saw it just as the sun was setting. We had just had a blast of hash and were feeling this incredible high. When we laid our eyes on this otherworldly monument, both Kelly and myself had tears in our eyes. Strange to think, but the other huge impression that stayed with me from India was the music of Barry White. His first album had come out, and believe it or not, they were playing it in a lot of the underground clubs. Interesting. In India. Creeping all over the world. Kelly and I discovered during our dope buying forays Oh, okay. They were playing his music in a lot of the underground clubs that Kelly and I discovered during our dope buying forays. Much as I loved the sitar, I got to say that it was Barry White who hunted me throughout my travels in India. Like me, Barry was an arranger. He had a musical vision that required a big sound. Not only reeds and horns, but strings as well. He took what Isaac Hayes, Curtis Mayfield, and Marvin Gaye had started, orchestrated funk, and took it to another level. He elevated the stuff. When I heard I've got so much to give, and I'm gonna love you just a little more, baby, I knew Barry was the next big thing. He had a theatrical excitement in his music that was good for dancers and just as good for listeners. Sometimes they mix up Barry White. Sometimes they mix up Barry with the disco craze. I didn't hear it that way. Disco was formulaic. Barry was original. Disco was superficial. Barry was deep. Barry had his Love Unlimited girl singers and his Love Unlimited orchestra. He was the kind of maestro I wanted to be. A brother capable and confident enough to do it all. It was strange to discover the magic of Barry White in the mysterious country of India. In New Delhi, I was confident enough to hide my big haul of hash in a dozen pair of boots. I cut off my hair to look like a nerdy student. The officials bought the look, and although I was sweating like a so-and-so, we eased on through customs, got on the plane, and with a couple of vials I kept in my coat, snorted all the way to New York. The situation at Kennedy Airport was tense. Governor Rockefeller was passing strict anti-drug laws. Get caught with more than an ounce of blow and go to jail for life. We smiled our way through customs with my stomach silently screaming all the way. In the city, given the nervous drug vibe in New York, I sold our hash for half of what it would have been half of what it would have brought a month earlier. No one wanted to get caught holding big quantities. I was eager to get to Buffalo and see Mom. It had been too long. Kelly stayed in Manhattan. Reunion with Mom was warm and wonderful. 32 folks in attendance, 20 hit that like. Please strike that like if you've not done so tonight. And subscribe so that you will be able to join us in the live streams here on this channel, the backup channel to Unplug Them. Got a surprise for you, I said. Seeing you is surprise enough. Add $5,000 to that surprise. I opened a suitcase stuffed with bills and handed Mom the cash. Where'd you get this? She asked. You really want to know? If I didn't, I wouldn't ask. India was profitable. You said you went over to learn some new instruments. That's true, but I also made a connection. You made a drug run, son? Afraid so. You know you crazy, don't you? I've been told. And I'm telling you again, bringing dope into the country when the country is on this anti-dope campaign is plain foolish. You get caught, you burn. I realize that, Mom, but I ain't getting caught. That's what they all said, including John Dillinger and Al Capone. I ain't working on that scale. The scale don't matter. What matters are smarts. You got to be smart enough to know when to walk away from that stuff. I know, James. I work in that world. It's easy to get to feeling no one can touch you. I don't feel that way, I said. You sure as hell talk that way, boy. Mom, I'm paying you back your $5,000. I'm even throwing in an extra $500 for interest. I don't charge my children interest. Well, I'm paying it. So take the money and be glad. Just stay out of that dang dope business, James. Soon you'll be sampling all your wares. I already was. You can't get high off your own supply. It was good being back home with that stereo system set up in the living room. Miles had an album out there. Miles had an album out that year, Big Fun, where he used Herbie Hancock and Chick Corea, not to mention Lonnie Liston Smith on piano and Michael Henderson on bass. That sounds like a good album there. You familiar with that, Brother Reg? Big Sister V? That sounds like a good ensemble. Anyway, I digress. Miles played electric trumpet with a wah-wah pedal. Doggone Miles was out there. So was Marvin Gaye. He'd gone from What's Going On to Trouble Man to his current thing, Let's Get It On. In Buffalo, they were playing Marvin's stuff night and day. Two songs hit me especially hard. Funky Stuff by Kool and the Gang, Can't Get Enough, and Ecstasy by the Ohio Players, dope sample. Both groups were funkier than White Cane, but I thought White Cane was on a higher musical level. White Cane, though, was a memory, and these groups were making a mint. The thought of making a mint led me to an idea. With the bread I made from selling the hash, why not promote an Ohio Players Kool and the Gang concert? Those groups had just started out, and although they each had a hit, I didn't see them getting top dollar. I was right. I got them both for $3,000 through the Queen booking agency. That was cheap. If I ever have a smash hit like them, I thought, you can bet your patootie I won't be bought that cheap. Anyway, my event was a smash. I made out like a bandit, took my profit, and bought me a Mercedes that I drove out to the coast with Kelly at my side. This guy is something else. With my pockets full of cash, I moved into the party mode. The party went on for 6 months in L.A. Living in high-class hotels, we stayed high and lived large. I wasn't thinking about going back into making my own music because the music scene had burned me so bad. Just wanted to party. One night I partied so hard that I totaled the Benz by driving into a car. Suddenly, I was broke again. Everyone's funny when it comes to money, but my thing is that I don't start hustling until I have to. At the start of 1974, I had to. Kelly had left to hang out with her parents, and I was alone in another crummy studio apartment. The only thing that kept me from going completely bonkers was an old Fender bass that I taught myself to play. That and my afternoons shooting hoops at a playground at Santa Monica and Vine. It was there where I met a guitarist who said he could cop us some studio time. I figured I had nothing else to do, so I might as well cut some tracks. It was the first time I played bass on a session. I did 2 songs, My Mama and Funkin' Around. I dug them well enough to start shopping them. Lo and behold, A&M Records was impressed. With Supertramp and Peter Frampton on their roster, A&M was hot. They put out my single, but when I wouldn't agree to sign an exclusive deal with them as an artist-producer until they guaranteed me an ad budget for My Mama, they stopped all promotion and the single died. That would be the end of another messed up record biz story if the record hadn't sold in Europe. When I learned that My Mama was going great guns in England, Germany, and France, I got my tail in gear, put together a 4-piece band, and flew over. My hustle kicked in. I found a promoter who booked us on a nice tour in good-sized clubs. I was making bread. I was turning out the crowds. I was convinced all over again that, like Jimi Hendrix, I'd make it overseas and return home a conquering hero. The only thing that stopped my momentum was Stockholm. I arrived in the dead of winter when it was colder than I don't know what. I knew Sweden was a jazz-loving, blues-loving land. And I knew the great saxist, Stan Getz, had lived there and was revered as a god. I knew the hip song, Dear Old Stockholm, that Miles had recorded with Coltrane. I was ready for Stockholm to be hip, but man, it was hipper than hip. The ladies loved brothers. That's all you care about everywhere you go. Musicians were especially admired, just as I admired the beautiful taste that went into their artful way of life. I had never seen such elegant furniture, lamps, and clothing. I wandered through the museums where I felt I was in the presence of a people who understood how to make their surroundings beautiful. Then I met this beautiful 19-year-old Swedish chick. With her blonde hair and blue eyes, her tall stature and her easy smile. She was freedom itself, I bet. Just like Lady Liberty or Minerva. Free sex seemed to be the thing in Sweden. They didn't have puritanical hang-ups like Americans. And so, we were exploring the outer limits of physical pleasure. Much to my surprise and delight, those limits were extended when her mother walked in her room and joined us in bed. This was my real introduction to fully realized freakery. At first, I wasn't sure. Was it too crazy? Well, they didn't think so, and ultimately, neither did I. Mom was only in her mid-30s and just as fine as her daughter. They liked sharing me, and I liked sharing them. You'd think jealousy would rear its ugly head, but it never did. Their pad became my home base in Europe. I'd jump over to other countries for a gig now and then, but I was mainly with these lovely women. Cool as Stockholm was, after a year of living abroad, I was missing Kelly. We'd be writing back and forth. Naturally, I didn't say a word to her about my mother-daughter setup. I was eager to get home and see Mom. And besides, after a while, even the freakiest scene can lose its heat. When I told my two lovers that it was time to split, they weren't happy. They thought our little scene would go on forever. I assured them that I'd be back someday, but that wasn't good for them. So one of them, I still don't know which, hid my passport. The hassle to get a new one took nearly a month. When I finally left Sweden, I saw that their free attitude about sex wasn't as simple as I first thought. Kelly and I hooked up in Toronto, where I found work in a blues band called Mainline that worked all over Canada. They had a big album at the time and paid well. I felt that I was marking time until I made another solo move. I knew that would happen because I was writing more original material than ever before. Living in Europe had given me a worldlier outlook. Kelly and I decided to get married. We went to Buffalo and had the preacher come to Mom's house. The ceremony was small but pretty. Mom was crying. A few months later, I was crying. It seemed like marriage killed the happiness between me and Kelly. Back in Toronto, we were sniping at each other so often that I moved out of her apartment and moved in with a coke dealer. Turned out the dealer's best client was George Clinton. I was eager to meet the man. This is going to get good because I know they had a rivalry where George was dissing Rick James, saying he was biting. George Clinton accused Rick James and them of biting and depicted it in one of the little funkadelic tunes in the Uncle Jam album or the Motor Booty Affair album, one of them. Anyway, turned out the dealer's best client was George Clinton. I was eager to meet the man. The dealer said I could bring Clinton his coke on his next stopover in Toronto. George was cool, 7 years older than me. Clinton was one of the heaviest cats in the history of R&B. He had the cojones to wear diapers on stage and dye his hair every color in the rainbow. Looking like Tekashi 6ix9ine granddaddy. After I delivered his blow, he invited me to do a line with him. I'm glad George cut it. George cut it. Last time I saw, he was looking rather clean cut. Looking like a man his age should look, in a suit and everything. Anyway, still Luciferian, I'm sure. After I did, pardon me. After I delivered his blow, he invited me to do a line with him. We started chatting, and I ran down my history. He was impressed and wanted to hear some of my new songs. He had a piano in his suite and invited me to play. I did some of my newer stuff. It was all funky, and George was all smiles. You shouldn't be running no toot, George said, a.k.a. you shouldn't be selling no cocaine. You need a major label behind your music. I've tried before, I said, but it's never worked out. I can help you. Man, that'd be great. I'd really be grateful. No problem. Just keep the good blow coming while I make some calls. Before George left Toronto, I showed up 2 more times with special deliveries of high-octane cocaine. Both times he repeated his offer to hook me up with industry bigwigs. When he left town, though, he still hadn't done anything for me. Over the next several months, when I called the numbers he'd given me, no one answered. In fact, George Clinton never did one blanking thing to help me. I swore that one day I'd pay him back. I found a little deal on a Canadian label called Quality that wasn't quality at all. They didn't know nothing about distribution or promotion. Used 2 different band names, Rick James and Hot Lips and Gorilla, and put out a couple of singles, Hollywood Stars and Sweet Surrender, but they both tanked. With music still looking like a dead end, I concentrated on drugs. I was making good money dealing coke, but saw that if I could reach Canada's main connection, I'd make more. Years later, when I saw Al Pacino in Scarface, I completely related. Just like he climbed up the ladder from dealer to dealer until he decided to meet the source himself in Latin America, I did the same. If I was going to deal, I was going to deal big time. Next thing I knew, I was flying first class to Cartagena, Colombia. And we're at our hour in. And we're going to wrap up this reading for the night. We know where we're at. Actually, the Google Reader thing actually takes care of that, so we don't have to worry about that. But just so that it's said and it's on record, we stopped reading at 168. Page 168. And folks' battery is down low and everything like that. Elijah Brown says he's on 4% battery. Yes, Scarface is quite overstated and overrated. I didn't think it was so sweet back then. I never did think it was so sweet. The sweetest thing about Scarface is the Ghetto Boys samples from the movie. All right. And there's Sweet Lady 0512. Okay, so what y'all want to do? Read one more chapter of Glow? Because we ain't going to finish it all tonight. We got 200 pages to go. I thought perhaps we could watch it all tonight, but I ain't finna read no 200 pages. One more? Okay, one more. One more it is. This is it. We want to hear about what happened to him when he went to Cartagena. Unity. All right, let's do it. Part 3. What a title. This should have been the name of the book. Okay, y'all ready? All right, let's go. Part 3. Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad. Blow by blow is this chapter. Let us continue. I looked in her eyes and said, "Baby, I wish you could understand my words when I tell you that I've got the body of life. When I tell you that you've got the body of life." She said something to me in Spanish that I didn't understand. But I sure got the message when she opened her beautiful self unto me. Bathed in moonlight, we made love on a soft blanket on the beach. Waves rolled in off the gentle Caribbean. Trade winds cooled the night. We were coked to the gills. She was the wildest lover I had ever known. I couldn't stop, and she couldn't stop. In the land of lovemaking, I was in heaven. In the land of lovemaking in prime below, I was in heaven. It didn't start out that way. When I arrived with my dealer pal, I'll call him Myron, we went looking for our connection, a Colombian cat we'd met in Buffalo. He was off on vacation island. We didn't know what to do, so we checked into a hotel and cased the city. It was a big, beautiful resort town, kicked back and sunny, on the country's northern coast. We were careful with our money because we wanted to use the lion's share to buy drugs. Meanwhile, there was nothing to do but wait for the return of our connection. Weeks passed. Our main hang was a hip little bar across the street from our hotel. The owner was a friendly cat I'll call Jose. The clientele was affluent, dudes with expensive rides and ladies with sleek jewelry and chic clothes. One night I noticed a guitar in the corner. I picked it up and started to play and sing. Jose smiled. He liked what I was doing and bought me a drink. I kept singing, and before long, I'd captured the attention of every so-and-so in the place. Within a few days, I was one of the featured attractions among the smart set of Cartagena. This guy really should have written a book. This sounds so fantastic. Jose kept feeding me drinks, and the fans kept feeding me tips. In other words, fantasy-like. But I'm not I'm not going to discredit or negate what the man said. It's just quite amazing the circles that he was able to run in. He was almost at he was almost at the Tate murders. Okay, he knew Crosby, Stills, and Nash. He was all wrapped in with the CIA weird scenes inside the Canyon crowd, and here he ends up being a featured performer, a featured attraction among the affluent people of Cartagena. Jose kept feeding me drinks and the fan kept feeding me tips. They dug American soul. I gave them a taste of everything from Ray Charles to Al Green. I also knew the latest Bill Withers songs, which went over great on acoustic guitar. Chicks came on to me, and one of them, Maria, was the one who loved making love on the beach. Her dad was rich and she never let me pay for anything. All this was fine, even exciting, but after 5 or 6 weeks, it seemed clear that our connection wasn't coming back to Cartagena anytime soon. Me and Myron were eager to make our big score. We needed merchandise to bring home. I ask you something and you answer honestly, said Jose one night after I packed him into his place. Ask, I said. You are a musician, but you come to Colombia for another reason. Am I right? Sure, you're right. I can help you with that other reason. You can? We fly to Bogota tomorrow. That okay? That's okay, Jose. You lead the way. By then, I'd been in Cartagena for nearly 2 months and trusted this man. He paid me good money to sing. Who could have guessed that he was a major dealer himself? Bogota was a blast. There was political nervousness in that city where the military guarded every corner, but Jose knew all the cool spots. He took me to a fence where I bought a handful of hot emeralds for a song. He took me to the best restaurants in the city. He also took me to meet the man, where I bought 5 keys for 25 G's. Myron and I packed it up and shipped it to Montreal, keeping 2 ounces for the trip. I was warned not to carry coke across the borders, but I was too bold to be told anything. I kept the toot in the body of an expensive hairbrush. Me and Myron flew into Montreal, blasted on the world's best blow. Myron went off to sell our stuff, while I decided to catch up with Mom in Buffalo. She looked good and had lots of questions about Colombia. I told her all about my music gig at Jose's, but that didn't fool her. If she had any doubts about the real reason I went down there, those doubts went away when I said I'd soon be sending her $15,000. Pardon me. What's this for? She asked. Money you've loaned me over the years. So it was a good business trip, she said with a smile. The best, I said. I won't have to work for a year. But you always have to work on your music, James. You can't neglect your music. Your music is your gift. On the subject of music, I saw that George Clinton was playing Buffalo. Parliament had signed with Casablanca out in L.A. and had a smash album up for the downstroke. I can't lie and say I wasn't jealous. Clinton was funky, but his verbal okay, this is so. Clinton was funky, but his verbal ad libs between the tunes was lame. I hated it when he talked instead of played. After the show, I had something to talk to him about. You were gonna hook me up with a label, I mentioned to him. Then you effing disappeared. I'm a working musician, man. I've been traveling. I'll get to it. In the meantime, you holding any interesting merchandise? In other words, you got any dope on you I could partake in? Rick James say, I'm holding the bomb. Cool. Is this here on TV? Let's make a deal. I sold George a few ounces at triple my normal price. It had been a few weeks since Myron had gone to Montreal to turn our Colombian supply into cash. I got word he was back in Toronto, but when I called, he never answered. I decided to catch up with his butt in person. I flew to Toronto where I ran into Kelly. Enough time had passed to let us forget all our fights. The vibe between us was good again. The love making was even better, and I was feeling great, except for doggone Myron, who was nowhere to be found. Stuff was getting serious. Word around town was that he'd bought a new pad and a Rolls. That's my doggone money he was using. The more he evaded me, the more enraged I became. Who did this lame so and so think he was? I was not about to get ripped off. Though he kept his address a secret, I slipped a friend of his 100 for the information. I knew better than to knock on the front door. Instead, I hid out in the garbage alley. I wore a hoodie over my head and had a butcher knife in my hand. When he came out to dump his garbage, I jumped him. He was soft. He started crying like a baby, begging me not to hurt him. "Where's my blanket money?" I said, nicking his Adam's apple with my knife. "And why the F haven't you called me back? Why you been hiding?" "The coke got confiscated by customs." Lying MF. "I swear." I pressed the knife a little harder against his throat. As I drew blood, I said, "Give me what's mine or I'll kill you." He knew I wasn't kidding, so he led me into the house where he opened his safe and gave me 15 G's in cash and a pound of blow. "Ain't enough," I said. "All I got," said Myron. "Sell your rolls, sell your crib. I don't care how you get it, just get it. If I don't get another 60,000, I'm coming for your tail." A week later, I had the money, and me and Kelly had a bad townhouse in an exclusive section of Toronto. We were living high. I wanted to show her the beautiful beaches of Colombia, so we flew over to Cartagena, where I hooked up with Jose, who kept us high and happy for a sunny 2 week second honeymoon. I couldn't leave without scoring some of that serious toot. I bought several ounces. All the blow didn't fit in the body of my brush. Not wanting to leave any behind, I wrapped the remainder tightly and hid it inside the big Windsor knot of my tie. I dressed like a college kid nerd at 27. I looked 17, and with my blue blazer, khaki pants, button-down shirt, and rep tie, who would ever think to search me? The customs cats, that's who. That's what it said. The customs cats, that's who. Happened at the Miami airport. They went through our stuff and fortunately didn't open the brush. But that wasn't enough for them. They put me in a room and told me to strip. I was scared like a big dog. Took off my jacket, my shoes, my socks, and my pants, and carefully slid off my tie, making sure that the knot held tight. I placed my tie on the floor, took off my pants and underwear, and stood there shivering. The officials, mean-looking bastards, went through the pockets of my pants, my blazer, and my shirt. They ripped open the lining of the blazer and looked in the cuffs of the pants. They kept stepping around my tie. If they decided to open it, my tail was through. He said the one that rhymed with grass. "Okay," said one of the customs cats. "You can get dressed." I tried not to sigh too deeply because I didn't want to show my relief, but I dressed quickly and was about to leave when the guy said, "Wait a second. Let me take a look at that tie." Oh, no. Oh, man. Murphy's Law. Wow. He says, "Oh, doggone it." It was all over. As I waited for him to tell me to take it off, I wondered about the length of my prison sentence. But instead of having me take it off, he just came over and felt the lining. He ran his hand all the way to the knot, and then, miracle of blanking miracles, he just stopped. "You're clear," he said. Silently, I said, "Thank you, Jesus." It's the only time y'all remember him. And he's pulling your tail out the fire. Back in Toronto, Kelly and I settled down in our cool townhouse. That close call with customs gave me a feeling of invincibility. I could pretty much get away with anything. I had some bread, I had some new ideas for songs, and I had my wife back. What could go wrong? Sexual loyalty was not my strong suit. One morning I arrived home at 8 a.m. after a wild night. I'd found me a pair of blanks who were flying their freak flag high. I was willing to fly high myself, and the menage a trois was something I wouldn't soon forget. Kelly wasn't in her bed, so I figured she'd gone shopping. To get the evidence off me, I took a long shower and then fell into bed. When I woke up, it was 4 p.m., and Kelly wasn't back. I made some calls but still couldn't find her. Slept alone that night and next morning woke up alone, still no Kelly. Her call came 2 days later. Where the blank you been? I asked. You got no right to ask me that, said Kelly. You wander off when you want to and never think twice about calling me. I couldn't respond because Kelly was right. What she didn't know was that I had even screwed a coat of her girlfriend. Or maybe she did know. In this conversation, I decided the best thing was to keep quiet. I've had it, Kelly said. I've gone back to my ex. She'd gone back to him before. One of those times I'd gone over to his place and kicked his tail. But I didn't see myself doing that again. Even though I loved Kelly, I couldn't help but realize that I'd been too heartless with her for too long. I'm sorry, baby, was all I could say. Sorry won't do it, Rick. This time I'm gone for good. I knew she meant it. I knew she wasn't coming back. And for reasons I can't entirely explain, I felt myself falling apart. When I tried to write songs, I couldn't. I thought I'd compose a sad song about losing Kelly, but the blues were too strong to let me work. I wouldn't even call it the blues. I'd call it hardcore depression. I thought I'd use dope to kill the pain, but the dope got me even more down. I thought some wild strange would change my mood, but I couldn't perform. I couldn't get aroused. That had never happened to me before. Talk about depression. I moped around the house. I stared into space. I thought back on my life, and all I saw was failure. Marvin Gaye had done the soundtrack for a film called Trouble Man. It should have been my movie. He had a hit, I Want You, that was burning up the charts. My friend, you could even say my mentor, Norman Whitfield, was producing Rolls Royce, who'd broken through with Car Wash and Across the Board Smash. Neil Young was a big solo artist. David Crosby, Stephen Stills, and Graham Nash were touring the world. All these people were making monster progress, and I was still on my knees and knuckles. Aside from buying and selling Colombian cocaine, I hadn't done nothing. My music had gone nowhere. I felt like it never would. I felt like I should call Mom, but I knew that Mom would say what all moms say, that it'd get better and that I had to have faith, that God had given me this talent for a reason. I didn't want to hear those words because those words could only make me feel worse. I didn't want to do anything except sit around and sleep all day. When I woke up, I put Bobby Blue Bland on the box singing about Stormy Monday, but Tuesday's just as bad. I smoked hash till I couldn't see straight. Then I'd go out and stuff myself with some greased up funk food and go back to sleep. If I picked up a woman to try to raise my spirits, she got ticked when I couldn't perform. I went through all my blow. I went through all my money except for enough to buy me a pistol. I wanted to end the agony. If music couldn't bring me out of this, if dope couldn't do it, if sex no longer excited me, what was the point of living? There was none. I loaded the pistol and put it on the kitchen table. I stared at it for hours. I took it in my hand and put it against my temple. I felt the cold steel against my skin. All I had to do was pull the trigger. I wanted to. I wanted out. And that's the end of the reading of Rick James for tonight, without a doubt. Thank you all for coming out. And we will pick up in a live stream to be announced. We will continue. We know where we're at now. Certainly, we're at a cliffhanger moment. So we will return to read the rest of that for our Hermetic Theater weekend show. Okay? 27 folks is in the house. 24. Hit that like, and I appreciate each and every one of you tonight. Right on. Rick James was the original Wild Boy. And you're all more than welcome. And I hope that you can catch us on the next live stream extravaganza. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise, we'll be back tomorrow night for prayer requests. But if not, like I said, we'll pick up everything on the weekend. We've only got 2 prayer requests now, as it is. Aside, aside from the 1 or 2, yes, the 2 that we read. So it's only two others right now. So we're gonna give folks a chance. If you've not done so already, but you would be interested in having your prayer read and agreed upon here, please do send your information to brothermintheo@gmail.com. You can give me a short summary of what's going on, or you can give me a detailed email. Either way, the more details, the better. And again, if you appreciate and you like this channel, if this ministry has served you and you feel so led and you have been fed by its bread, you would like to sow back into what is sown into you, you can do so by way of PayPal. You send a seed of any size donation to a temple of the truer Yahshua at yahoo.com. And that's the end. And I hope to catch you all again. Much love. Shalom. And I ask in the authority of the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, in the power of his name, that our Father in heaven would bind Psalm 4 and 8 and Proverbs 3 and 24, sweet sleep in the comfort of the Comforter, to everyone within the sound of my voice. We touch and we agree and we call it done. Amen and amen. Have a blessed rest. And remember, you can order Unplug 'em Garments of Praise, that's the t-shirts and hoodies with the scriptural messages and slogans on them. You can order them. You can find the link to the Custom Ink website where you can order them directly from them. You want to get 50 sold of each style so everybody can get what it is that they ordered by mid-October. If not, then folks will be getting refunds. I know some folks would much rather have their shirts. So, if you've not checked it out, you're already aware of how YouTube works. Up underneath every video, including this one here, there's a description section. How do you find a description section? You go up here, and it's the show more, right? So they don't have much of anything in their description section here. But if you go to this video after I put it up under there, but if you look at the last live stream, if you look at the live stream before that, if you look at the 2 pause and read movies, if you look in the description section, you will find that information there where you can order your Garment of Praise t-shirt, your Unplug 'em t-shirt, or hoodie. A couple of different styles. And also the information for sending emails and for sowing seeds is also in that same description. And I thank you all in advance. Good night.